Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jan de Bailey. I'm a community pharmacist and working as professional affairs advisor for the PGU. I was asked to present the community pharmacist vision on pharmacovigilance in the next 5 years. Um, so just to briefly say, for those who don't know PGU yet, PGU is the European Association representing national professional bodies and national professional associations across 32 countries across Europe, including EU countries, candidate EU countries, and EFTA members. As you know, community pharmacists are often the last person patients see when taking their medicines, and therefore have also a crucial role in safeguarding the use of medicines and complement the role of the GPs in safeguarding the use of medicines. Next to that, community pharmacists are also very seeing patients who don't, or the general public that is not ill, making that also their role in prevention and risk minimization measures for instance, pregnant women is crucial before they start taking potential heart medications. So regarding the use of, regarding the work of PGU on pharmacovigilance and risk minimization, you can find all of these summarized in one best practice paper, which you can find on our website in case you're interested to read more on best practices on pharmacovigilance and risk minimizations across our different member countries. When it comes to our vision, I'm going to share with you five points where we feel that the community pharmacist contribution can further develop and where we can bring additional value even in the coming years when it comes to patient safety. The first one is that we see ourselves developing towards more personalized safeguarding of medicines through wider integration of clinical data in pharmacovigilance. So to give some examples, first of all, there's high need for wider integration of clinical data to make sure that we have the complete overview of assessing a certain situation, meaning that also things such as lab measurements are very interesting for the community pharmacy at the point of dispensing to evaluate the safety. Look at, for instance, renal dysfunction. I think this is something that has a huge impact on safety of certain medicines, but is often something that we do not have access to. So through shared electronic health records, which is already actually the case in a number of countries, I think this is one important evolution. Secondly is indications. I put it as a separate point because I cannot stress enough the need for having an indication for a pharmacist to evaluate the safety, not only for the evaluation, but also when it comes, for instance, to the correct reporting of suspected adverse drug events. I think this is crucial for every medicines therapy that the indication is communicated. When it comes to integration of real-world data on adverse drug reactions and medication errors, also there it's important that community pharmacists are constantly up to date with the newest information on patient safety, and that we can bring that information to and communicate that to our patients. When we talk about future prospects, we also see in some countries already the inclusion of pharmacogenomics testing data, which benefit a lot the assessment of a certain safety situation. For instance, in the Netherlands, there are already pharmacists who also have, by the way, access to this shared electronic health records. They interpret pharmacogenetic testing data in a pilot, and they shown and make, based on some evidence-based recommendations in collaboration with the prescriber, to potential do dose adjustments or, for instance, therapy switches when needed. A second important point is that we want to further maximize the use of e-health and ICT tools to report, prevent, resolve, and communicate better with patients. I think when it comes to efficiency, both efficiency and effectiveness of patients towards pharmacovigilance, these tools are vital. Of course, the pharmacy already has often very advanced pharmacy softwares, which are linked to scientific databases, including contraindications, drug-drug interactions. But we see that, for instance, for the reporting, often there's no integrated e-health solutions there, which would reduce the administrative burden for pharmacists to report. Secondly, when it comes to preventing, as I already mentioned, interaction detection software is widely implemented. This is not only covering prescription medicines, but also over-the-counter drugs and, for instance, herbal medicines often. And when it comes to resolving, I think there it's very important that we further integrate electronic evidence-based support decision systems in the pharmacy software, and that we make wider use of electronic alerting systems for recalls and withdrawals. When it comes to communication, there also we can use several digital media tools to better inform targeted audience on risk minimization measures. And it's maybe not very fitting into the e-health and ICT conclusion, but I want to stress it here as well, because it's next to these electronic tools, I think it's also crucial that we keep on developing patient-friendly information as a physical act where we can communicate with the patients by making it available outside package, as already has been discussed today in the light of the valproate case. These are some examples. This is, you might not look like the most advanced or modern format of the software, but to show that also in the past already this was widely implemented. For instance, when you scan a product or a medicine in the pharmacy, it will connect with the patient medication history and will, based on the scientific database that's behind, will give a certain interaction. Doesn't mean that the pharmacist, of course, also will immediately act on this. He will evaluate based on the personal of the situation of the patient, whether a further action is needed, and consult with the prescriber to see whether actions such as dose adjustments of switching of therapies and others are needed. This is a bit more advanced example on clinical decision rules, which are integrated in pharmacy software in the Netherlands. So basically at the point of dispensing, when, for instance, to take the example of nitrofurantoin, when you would scan the drug, then basically an algorithm, an evidence-based algorithm following a certain decision tree would be running in the background of the pharmacy software and giving yes or no a certain alert. This alert also takes into account information such as, for instance, lab measurements, and therefore it's seen that this practice is actually very, very interesting to both efficiently as effectively improve the patient safety without taking it also too much time at the point of dispensing, and well, use the current available tools very well. Another example is on the medication recall systems, which are also in many countries already integrated electronically at the point of dispensing. So also shows a very good multi-stakeholder collaboration on this level, where you have, this is an example from France, the dossier Pharmaceutique, where the National Medicines Agency would, that's also used for instance, communicating health alarms, but where from the community pharmacy is also linked towards pharma companies to communicate about potential needed recalls and withdrawals, and so that the pharmacists can take immediate action on this. Thirdly, especially for certain patient groups in need, we see that already in Europe there's the expanding of pharmacy services supporting the safe, effective and rational use of medicines. Two main examples are medication reviews and new medicine service. Medication reviews would be done for polymedicated patients and is a structured evaluation of a patient's medicines with the aim of optimizing the medication use and improving the health outcomes. As you see, there exist different types of medication reviews based on the information that is available to the pharmacist. And here I also want to stress the importance of the patient interview when it comes to evaluating the safety of his therapies. There it's also important that pharmacists use the right communication, not only tools, but also basic communication language with their patient to make sure that they feel comfortable and open to speak about potential side effects they are feeling or potential other risks. New medicine service is a service that's used more for the start from a new chronic therapy, for instance, where the pharmacist would sit down with the patient and then discuss the use and potential also safety of the medicines and potential adverse drug reactions or side effects he would encounter, and also evaluate that in follow-up consultations. There it's crucial to notice that these interviews focus a lot on adverse drug reactions, but also adherence and the use of the medicines. For instance, with asthma puffers, I think this is not only crucial that we make sure that the medicines are not overused, but also that they are used well, because that's also direct patient safety risks if, for instance, asthma or diabetic drugs are not used accordingly. Fourth point, and this I will also want to really stress, is to further the multi-professional and multi-stakeholder collaboration to maximize the benefits for the patient safety. We as community pharmacists strongly believe in more effective problem solving and prevention of adverse effects in partnership, and that partnership is, of course, within the primary care with the general practitioners, but also, for instance, with home care nurses, but to ensure the continuity of care, it's important that we also take here secondary and tertiary care, such as hospitals, but also nursing homes into account, because speaking for myself from practice, I see here that often is a large issue that the sharing of the information and the communication towards the patient is not so very efficient and effective because there are no very good sometimes systems in place to ensure this continuity of care and to make sure that all healthcare providers are equally informed on the patient's therapy. The importance of integrated e-health solutions, not only as the examples mentioned before, but also to improve the communication between the different healthcare providers, because that's often one of the barriers today towards multi-professional collaboration. When, for instance, a certain interaction detection would be seen into a pharmacy, then it's very important that we can appropriately communicate back to the prescriber to consult certain possible interventions. Today, that's not always so easy because, for instance, prescribers cannot be reached at the point, so we need to look how we can make better use of integrated e-health solutions to facilitate this dialogue. Lastly, it's also on continued collaboration, of course, both on the national level and as European level between pharmacy associations and national medicines agencies to further strengthen the role and the contributions that community pharmacists can make. And when it comes to my last point, which is should always be there, it's the focus on training and education when it comes to risk minimization measures and pharmacovigilance. It was also already mentioned a couple of times today, but to incorporate these really in good pharmacovigilance practices, risk minimization measures and medication safety activities into the good pharmacy practices and, for instance, continuous professional development programs and pharmacy education and training. Here I also want to stress the early involvement of community pharmacists in the development process. And we talked today already about implementation, and I think there we need to make sure that these measures, also risk minimization measures, are really fit for purpose and fit for working with them in practice to ensure that not only for the patient but also the healthcare provider himself feels very comfortable and make sure that it's a very efficient and effective tool to bring to his patients. This is the final overview again of our recommendations. So when it comes to our vision for the next 5 years, pharmacists are very committed to continue developing their contribution in these areas through making sure that pharmacists can have a complete and efficient and effective medicines evaluation and safeguarding the use of the medicines, done together with true wider integration of data and maximizing the use of e-health and ICT tools, but also by expanding pharmacy services for certain patient populations and make sure that further multi-professional collaboration and integration of training and education on pharmacovigilance is further developed. Thank you very much, and welcome if you have any questions.
Thanks very much, Jan. We've got time for 1 or 2 questions or points. Any of the other pharmacy representatives want to add or to nuance? Anybody want to clarify any of the points? Raymond, please.
If you want me to add, I certainly want to reiterate what Jan has said in terms of the need for collaboration, integration, and the use of IT in terms of engaging not only with patients but also with healthcare professionals. So it becomes very much the multidisciplinary team and pharmacists being very much at the core of that.
And I was struck with your 5 points about how they're very much about the delivery of healthcare. I mean, I come from a regulatory background, so I was wondering whether we were going to have suggestions about periodic safety update reports or something. And actually, you've stuck to your core territory, which is the delivery of healthcare, and your points are very practical in that space. Any other questions or comments? Please, Hindra.
One comment I have, I think, for the it's for the aging population where there are many different diseases, and would that, I mean, that's really critical. I noticed that older people take medicines without knowing the side effect and the interaction. Would your program that you've talked about, would they help that, shed more light into the clinical practice? Because doctors are not really up to date on that.
No, exactly. I think that's, for instance, I suppose you refer to the medication reviews, and that is really the goal of the to sit down with the polymedicated patient, for the pharmacist to make the overview and to assess already whether there is some sort of safety risk because of certain drugs that are combined, and for instance, something like double medication use or other things. But really to sit down, as I stressed as well, with the patient to see if he understands where he takes his medication for, and also to see if he has any problems in using the medications. So when it comes to adherence, is really one of the main goals of this conversation, is to improve the adherence for the patient.